Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Kunitsu-Gami Path of the Goddess. So for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I just have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. It's a Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time, and I tend to agree. Broadly speaking, 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, keep it around 10 minutes, give you the broad strokes info, and then you can go and make up your own mind. So this isn't the first time I've looked at this. There was a demo build. This game was kind of like, it's not a shadow drop, but it was very late announced during Capcom's streaming event, or at least the demo dropped during that time, and I checked out that version because there's something about this game that's very appealing, and I am quite a bit of a Capcom fan. I love the Resident Evil series, but also a lot of the stuff that they're doing, both, established and newer, even like Monster Hunter Stories, spin-offs like that, quite enjoyed that. Exoprimal, loved it. No one else played it, but I loved it. So I thought, yeah, I'll check this out. So I was impressed with the demo, and I talked a bit about it then, and we will retread a little bit more. There are some more mechanics that weren't in that demo build, some more kind of meta progression stuff. But yeah, so far I really like this, man. I'm so backed up with games to play at the moment, but this is definitely on my list to get through. So yeah, highly recommend it. It is obviously coming out of a AAA publisher and it's a AAA price tag. A little bit under, you could probably argue between high AA and low AAA pricing, but it's all RE engine and it's made by the Capcom internal team. So for all intents and purposes, I see it as a AAA product. It just might be a bit more of a side in-between palette cleanser as far as big releases go. But that doesn't take away the fact that there's still a game here. There's still content, it's still very pretty and polished and quite original. And personally, I'm a big fan of kind of backing AAA when they do stuff like this. Unusual, dare I say niche, or at least niche in the West. This is all very much, Japanese fantasy, so it probably will go gangbusters in Japan. I can't really speak to that. But given the fact that it didn't have a lot of fanfare around its release here in the West, I'd say they kind of know what they're doing and probably have tempered expectations. But look, I think it's wonderful and you should check it out. If you missed it when I looked at it previously in the demo build, the broad strokes idea, it's very much like a Japanese folklore fantasy thing. You don't see this so much. The term Kagura seems to get thrown around, and from my very surface level understanding, that's kind of like a performative dance theater Japanese style of doing things and representing things, which I get. Like the way that they refer to your character and his attacks and his moves are dancing and sword dancing, and you can see that there's a fluidity to it. It's a very simple combo fighter for your character, left and right attacks going into, left, right, that sort of stuff. So it's not super complex in that part. In fact, arguably, the more I play it, the more I come to realize that your character is intentionally a glass cannon. You can do a lot of damage, but it's very risk reward, and you're not really, at least as far as I can tell, supposed to commit yourself to doing all the combat. There is a villager management component to this, which leans more Pikmin than colony builder. But yeah, it's very unusual, so it's difficult to attack this and dissect it because there's no real clear starting point. Let's try this. The main gameplay is kind of split between 2 different types of level. Essentially, in a sort of act, you will go into a new village that's been corrupted by this evil ancient presence. It's kind of thin on the mysticism storytelling, but that's fine. You don't have a voice protagonist or anything like that. It's very much mood and gameplay driven. But you'll come into a village that's been corrupted by these baddies, and you need to tackle that level in a day-night cycle. You're playing as this summoned holy warrior of some sort, protecting this priestess, and the overarching idea is that she needs to get from point A to point B. There's a door at the end of the level. She needs to get to there, and then you can cleanse it. To do that, she's going to move along this path down the center of the map, and that's kind of corrupted. It's got like black tar over it, and you can cleanse that with your swirling umbrella sword, because why not? And to do that, you have to spend the game's currency, these like pink orbs. It's used for many things, but that's one of the main things you use it for. So generally, during the day, you're going to run around this little instanced arena of a corrupted town, interacting with cutting down plants or freeing poor villagers that have been locked into the corruption or just corrupted points. There's like animals that you can hit with your sword and clear the corruption from them. So it's very spiritual, naturalistic kind of things going on there. It's kind of wholesome in a way, at least during the day, and you cash those points into clearing that path, and then she'll walk along that path slowly, clearing it. And chances are she won't clear it in a whole day, either because you don't have the points to pre-clear it for her, or that she just doesn't have enough time to go the whole length. Then it goes to nighttime, and at nighttime you essentially defend her in her final position where she got up to, as waves of baddies spew out of the gate and you fight them back. And what starts as simple, again, I've only put 2 hours in and there's a bit of retreading from the demo, but I've flown through that. I've gone through 3 sections and fought 3 bosses, each one more wonderful and wild than the last. All the design of characters and creatures alike is phenomenal in this game. And granted, it probably has a higher impact on me because I have an open mind and I'm Western, right? This stuff is so foreign and unusual, and I suppose maybe if you're a little bit stuck in the mud, you won't get that kick out of it. But it's not like this stuff is culturally familiar to me, so I find it quite fascinating. But what goes from just defending a streaming wave of dudes gets more complex, the paths become branching, and you come to realize that that's less about where your chick is going to go, because she's always going to push down the critical path, but more the enemies will spread out and they will take all these alternate paths to wrap around to get to her and attack her. So it gets quite complicated. Then you get multiple enemy types. Flyers have been introduced where the only way to get to them is with like a left-right aerial attack, or through the villages that you pick, which I haven't really touched on. So these villages that you clear from corruption during one of these missions, you can use that pink currency to convert them to a class that you've unlocked. And so far it seems you start with Woodcutter, which is just a general axeman, and as you beat one of these bosses, you'll unlock a new class type. So I've beaten 3 bosses, so I've got 4 classes now, right? And so Woodcutter's your basic melee, but he has some pretty serious negatives in that the flying eel things will dive down and kind of immobilize him. And so what you really need is an archer to not just shoot them down, but also clear that dude up. So you've got fairly rudimentary but highly functional character controls for your dudes. You just go up to them and you can pick and buy their class, and there's a bit of interplay. A lot of the currency is kind of for that, is like you'll go into a boss fight or a scenario and you'll realize you've kind of got the wrong lineup of dudes, and so you can on the fly, it does cost you a premium, but you can change them between classes, and that's clearly what the gameplay loop wants you to do. So you try and come up with the right mix match, and you do that over the course of a couple of days until you get through, and then you clear the shrine out. Now what that does is unlocks a second mission, which is a boss fight, which plays out very differently. But also, the village itself, now that you've captured it, it's almost in a way in the spirit of, you know, capturing outposts and clearing them in open world bloody Ubisoft games, albeit it's more instanced. So now what you can do is go back to the village that you captured, or freed I suppose, and you can task the villagers in a sort of in-between base management, low-key, you know, no violence, no doom, and you can get them to go around and repair parts of the village, which will then unlock you more rewards. And those repairs progress as you beat a mission. So you'll go over to a thing and there'll be a standard, it'll be like, here, allocate 2 villages to build this, and then you come back after you beat a mission. You can replay missions, there are star ratings and challenges, all that sort of stuff. There are certain build requirements for some of the build things, so you got to go around and find the wood piles and tell your dudes to pick them up and then go and tell them to build. And it's not fiddly, but it's not exactly breaking the bank mentally. It's cool little mini games, I guess. But yeah, when you go into the boss fight, it's much more different. It's just a pitched battle. You've got your set villagers, you give them the loadout, and you give them different commands. You can give them attack and defend, and most recent boss battle, you know, at the risk of spoilers, I guess, but I'm just talking about boss mechanics to give you an idea that there's some depth, is that you're fighting in the dark in these caverns, and it's been introduced that your villagers won't fight if they don't have a light source. And there's kind of spokes around the map. It's a circular arena and there are little torches all the way around the edge. So you can go over to them and give them in real time during the boss battles the same commands that you would have given them to build things at base. So it's kind of cool hybridizing that while you fight this giant worm in the dark. So you got to balance lighting these torches, telling your dudes to all attack, telling them all to defend, because it'll occasionally drop mini worms off the roof and they'll go and attack the chick, so you guys have to go back. If you light all the torches successfully, it will burst light the entire cavern, which will delete all the ads as well. It was quite tricky. It was really entertaining and engaging. This weird boss fight, you know, in the vein of doing an MMO boss fight, but instead of being all players, you're interacting with these pretty low IQ NPCs, and it's not that different for some, with some interesting mechanics, and it's got me wanting to find out what the next boss is and the next boss after that. Anyway, look, I don't need to waffle, but I think I've made my point. The game is unusual. It's doing some really cool original mechanics, unusual art style. Again, the appeal is not what I would call typical mainstream, and I'm pretty sure Capcom knows that, given, at least in the West, through my perspective, there's been almost no marketing around it. As far as I'm concerned, it's worth your time, worth your money. It's very cool, especially if you're already a bit of a fan of what they're doing as a studio and a publisher. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.